Good afternoon to everyone tuning in or wherever you guys are. Maybe it's morning or evening. I'm Jill Berkowitz. I'm the host of the 160 Characters podcast. And today I have joining me as a guest, Josh Margolis, who is the founder and CEO of Purple Cloud. Welcome, Josh. It's so good to see you.
Thank you.
So I actually really want to talk about Purple Cloud, but from my own research, it's clear that you have such an impressive background in the tech industry. So I'd kind of love to explore your experiences leading up to now. I know previously you had founded Magnetic, a company aimed at search retargeting. You were the director of engineering at Yahoo, which, by the way, at post Juno and post AOL, Yahoo was my next email address.
Yeah.
Which I do currently still have and use. I do have Gmail and I have moved on, but I do still have my Yahoo. And then you also headed data processing at DoubleClick, which I think is so cool. So could you share some key insights or lessons you've learned from those roles and experiences and how they've shaped your approach to founding and leading companies like Magnetic and obviously also Purple Cloud?
Yeah, of course. So it's a little pessimistic to say, but I feel like I don't know if I've ever worked for a truly great company. I don't even know if there are truly great companies out there. I feel like if I went and got a job at a company I thought was truly great, I would feel a bit underwhelmed. So I feel like I've learned more from mistakes that I've seen other companies make and mistakes that I've made myself. I'd say most notably would be my last startup with Magnetic. I'd say the big mistake I made was as CEO, and first time being CEO, I was pulled in so many different directions. You're pulled by your head of sales is asking you to go to this meeting or hire people or do X, Y, or Z. Your head of marketing wants you to talk to some reporter or look at some blog, and then of course the investors and board of directors, and everybody's pulling you in all sorts of different directions. And the constituent that I ended up ignoring the most was our customers. And I think that is just a huge, huge mistake. And I feel like it's probably a mistake a lot of people make. I feel like a lot of people get pulled in lots of different directions. And I think it starts with the customer. You have to focus on the customer. And, with Purple Cloud, I've made it a lot easier in the sense that there's very few investors, there's very few employees. So I'm able to really focus on the customers. But if you really focus on the customers, it's absolutely, it's totally different. It's totally different. And
I really support that customer-centric approach too, because I feel like if you start there and you focus there, everything else comes with it.
Yep. But it results in some tough conversations because a lot of people have this belief, I'm going to build this huge company. Well, if your customers aren't asking for features that necessitate you to go and raise $10 million and open up 6 offices and have 100 employees, then maybe you don't need to do that. But people sort of have this idea of what they want to build, and it's kind of driven by something other than the customers versus my approach with Purple Cloud has been 100% focused on you tell me what you want. I'll do whatever you want. Obviously the company would be a bit different. It'd be a different size. It'd be very different in terms of how much money I raise. If they were asking me to build rocket ships to take supplies to the moon, I would have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. But given the product that they're asking for, it's sort of shaped the company that I've created.
And it's interesting how sometimes your vision of scalability, but like you said, what the customer is asking for might not actually add up.
Yep.
And so,
but really, I can't emphasize enough, just sitting down with your customer, listening to them, solving the problems that they have, I think is just the most important thing.
You can learn a lot from your customers.
100%. Yeah.
Probably about yourself too.
Yeah.
So you founded Purple Cloud in 2013, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And it was designed as a communication platform that provides integrated call tracking, texting, and chat. Purple Cloud is, from what I understand, specifically tailored to bridge the gap between brick and mortar stores and potential online customers during their product research phase, which makes so much sense to me. I'm curious though, that was 10 years ago. So do you think that your initial vision and intent behind the company's creation evolved over the last 10 years? Like, have you had to shift it all to reflect the changes of the retail industry and customer behavior, which has definitely changed over the last 10 years? And I guess that also leans into your customer-centric approach. I'm curious.
Yeah. So the product and even our website and even what you've read, it hasn't really kept up. I mean, the product is constantly evolving. It's sort of an interesting story. It all started with My former boss at Yahoo was Brian Acton. He was the CTO and co-founder of WhatsApp. Obviously, made a little bit of money, selling WhatsApp for billions of dollars. So the initial idea, of course, was chat. I'm going to do something with chat. Chat's cool. I'll figure out something with chat. And I had this idea for this app called Hala, which was like this sort of consumer-facing chat thing. But it's funny to say, but I feel not cool enough to make a consumer-facing product. I feel like making a consumer-facing product, it's like making a boy band popular. It's hard, it's just it's a different sort of way. So I quickly shifted to more of an enterprise focus of it's just what I felt comfortable with, working at Yahoo and DoubleClick in my prior experience. And even with Magnetic, it was all sold to enterprises. So I focused more on, at the time, Facebook like buttons were very, very popular. People would like buttons on everything, but I felt that businesses weren't really getting anything for those like buttons. It's not like every time you got a like, you got a list of the customers' names and email addresses and all the buying history. So I thought, well, maybe if there was a like button that was more enterprise focused, the enterprises would actually push it, So the initial idea was, it'd be some new sharing type widget that would be a little bit more enterprise focused, but it would have some consumer benefits to it as well. So that's why it's called Purple Cloud. The idea was I needed something that someone can see and immediately Google it, So orange triangle, red square, whatever it is, Purple Cloud. You can sort of see this little shape and say, oh, what's that? What's that thing? So it started as this little like button, and then quickly, there's so many different ways to connect a customer and a business. So it went from a like button to, adding QR codes or something that could detect what TV commercial was playing in the background, or then adding chat. So when you click the button, you're immediately engaging with that business. And then, of course, the customer was asking for texting. It'd be cool if the customer, we could engage with the customer via texting, or if our employees didn't even have to use your app, they were using texting. So I added texting. Of course, I was purchasing a bunch of phone numbers from Twilio. And then people said, well, could you record those calls? And added more and more functionality around call tracking using Twilio. Twilio got very, very expensive, just paying these large Twilio fees. So figured out a better way to do call tracking was to integrate directly with the phone systems that my customers already had, so that I didn't have to pay any phone carrier fees. I didn't have to pay Twilio. My cost became more similar to like a Google Analytics type cost as opposed to. So today, that's become the primary product. The primary product is sort of call tracking built into a phone system. It's still predominantly used by brick and mortar retailers, just because brick and mortar retailers still use a lot of phones. But there are all sorts of businesses that use this thing, private investigation companies, bicycle manufacturers, a lot of auto dealers, plant nurseries, all sorts of different, but it definitely has morphed, and it definitely, and to my credit, I feel happy about the fact it was very customer focused. I mean, it was really, customers kept on asking. And even today, I've started to incorporate more features, but they're all ideas from the customers. Obviously, I have to differentiate between a good idea and a bad idea, but every idea that's built in the Purple Cloud has come from a customer, definitely.
I'm so fascinated listening to you tell this story and this concept of starting from a like button.
Yeah.
I'm curious, everybody has a different brainstorm method or, strategy session. Some people go to the whiteboard, some people process everything in their brain, some people write things down furiously in a notebook when they have these ideas. What is your go-to method when you have an idea and you want it to be productized?
Yep. Yeah. So when I was, I don't know, 10 years old, I would sit in my bedroom at my desk and I would write code. I love to write code. And now I'm an adult. I'm 46 years old. I still love to sit in my bedroom and write code. So I haven't changed all that much. So to me, you have an idea, you play with the technology, you play with the stuff, you try different things out. And it's partly what am I inspired to build, and partly learning what's capable, partly educating the customer.
I want to get into the nitty gritty of the technology a little bit, whatever you can share. I know you've partnered with VoIP providers to create a phone system with call tracking. I think that that's really cool because, as you had mentioned, call tracking alone could cost a lot of money. So it's pretty intuitive that you were able to combine it. So since Purple Cloud, does both, and immediately provides data analytics to the sales staff, which ends up providing, direct and effective communication. What do you think sets your approach apart from standalone systems where a company might be paying for call tracking, phone, chat, all separately, in terms of the technology and integration, because I do think that sometimes this concept of integration could be overwhelming for somebody who's not familiar with it. Maybe people shy away from it, but they really shouldn't.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, this is the part of the conversation that I've explained to people 12,000 times before because it's so core to Purple Cloud. But so our approach is totally different. So our approach is to deeply integrate with the phone system. So Purple Cloud sits on top of a phone system, kind of like how Google Analytics sits on top of a website. So we literally track 100% of the inbound and outbound phone calls, 100% of the text messages, all the phone systems we integrate support texting, 100% of the voicemails, 100% of the time we know which employee made or received the call, whether or not they answered the call, what department they work in, what the customer selected going through some auto attendant or IVR. We know if the employee received a voicemail, if they listened to the voicemail, if they called them back. We know everything with 100% precision, with 100% specificity, without the employees doing anything. They don't have to know the words Purple Cloud. They don't have to do anything other than use their phone system like normal. We get that data into our reports. We get into the CRM. So we track 100% with zero effort. Our competitors, believe it or not, only track about 30% of calls on average with lots of effort. Our system costs 1/3 what our competitors because we don't have those phone carrier fees. When you forward a call, even on Twilio, to take inbound a call plus the outbound, it's like 2.5 cents a minute. If your business does 40,000 minutes, that's $1,000 right there. And phone carrier fees, forgetting all the development costs and server costs and stuff like that, it gets very expensive to forward calls through another phone system. So our approach is just track everything with zero effort by the employee with 1/3 the cost. So it's clearly I've spoken so fast. It's a pitch I've done 12 billion times before, but yeah, that's the big difference.
I was taking it all in. I have a couple thoughts. One of my first thoughts was about accuracy.
Yeah.
I'm picturing, in maybe traditional scenarios from years ago, when someone's on a business call, they're sitting there with their pen, or maybe fast forward a little bit with their laptop and they're taking notes. You are going to end up missing some details. It seems to me that with the use of call tracking, you're really not missing any details. And it's such a good resource to be able to go back to and refer to. So that's pretty amazing. I would think for the consumer
the accuracy is perfect. I mean, you have to compare the problem that Purple Cloud solves is an easier problem than our competitors are trying to solve. So our competitors forward the call through this phone system, and then what they're left with is an audio file. So now you have this audio recording of a phone call, and you have to figure out, well, did two people talk to each other? Did they leave a voicemail? Did the person select something going through the auto attendant? Who was that person that answered the phone? What department did they work in? Was this a customer service call? Was this a sales call? Like, what was going on? Now, that's their problem that they're trying to solve. Purple Cloud, because we know things down to an extension level, and we know who the employee, we know that the person who answered this phone is Jane Doe. She works in the sales department. She spoke for 2 minutes and 13 seconds, or she didn't answer the phone and a customer left it. Like, we know those details based on the integration with the phone system. We're not trying to use artificial intelligence or machine learning or anything like. We do use those things, and we'll talk about in a second, but we don't need those sorts of things to do our core functionality, versus our competitors have to use voice recognition. They have to transcribe the call. They have to try to figure out, was this a sales call? Was this a customer service? It's very, very difficult. Our approach is, it's easier. It's definitely easier.
When you have either a lead or a potential customer come to you, do you feel like you need to educate them? I'm just wondering in my head, if they've been using the same phone system for years, they've been a well-established business, they haven't changed much as far as their communication goes. Do you find you sometimes have to educate them on the fact that this even exists and how it exists and what they need to do in order to make it happen? Because I know sometimes people are very hesitant for change and wonder, well, what is this going to change for me? So I'm curious, how much educating do you have to do when you have a potential customer coming in, or even, maybe one who knows they want to do it, but they're just so nervous?
Yeah, so I think this is like going back to that customer focused approach. I think a good litmus test of have you done a good job in building a customer centric business is customers get it.
I want to talk a little bit about VoIP. It's become a much more widely known term in recent years. your website makes it clear that VoIP providers play an important role in your system. So can you explain why collaborating with a VoIP provider is such a pivotal aspect of Purple Cloud, especially now in 2023 compared to, I don't know if it was as pivotal 10 years ago. And do you think that collaboration makes you guys stand out amongst the crowd, or something else maybe?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So first off, VoIP in its own right stands out as just a hugely important technology. If you think about sort of a classic business with a classic phone system, their phone system doesn't support smartphone apps. It doesn't support texting. You can't send someone a picture. It doesn't support eFax. There's just a bunch of features that are missing. Now in comes VoIP. So now you have this system that runs over the internet. That's kind of neat. You don't need an extra phone line coming to your building. And then there's, a web-based interface. That's kind of neat too. And then you start to go into some of the game-changing technology. They support texting. Well, texting is the most common way that human beings communicate today, full stop. To have a corporate phone system that doesn't support texting is, to me, outrageous. Supporting texting is hugely valuable. And then they have these smartphone apps. So all the big VoIP providers provide a little app that can be installed on the employee's personal cell phone, which is kind of neat. They can walk away from their desk. They're not tied to the desk. But then you start to think about, well, what are the ramifications of that? Well, if that business loses power, if they lose internet, if they lose physical access to the building, that smartphone app still works. The cellular battery is the backup to power. The cellular connectivity is the backup to internet. It's completely can work remote. Obviously, the whole world is facing all sorts of crazy challenges these days, from forest fires to riots, and of course to pandemics. There's lots of reasons why people are not accessing their businesses. If you have a VoIP phone system, you're able to work from home. Your receptionist can be working, sitting on a bucket in a parking lot and still able to transfer calls, and your business can still be up. It's hugely powerful. And obviously the ability to work from home. So that Purple Cloud's approach, of course, VoIP providers are hugely pivotal to, just because we're Google Analytics for a VoIP provider. We're effectively a tracking system that sits on top. But the relationship has been mutually beneficial, where they bring clients to me. They introduce me to clients. There's lots of value on the sales front, but then at the same time, when I'm with them and we're together selling, it's oftentimes we're selling a VoIP phone system and Purple Cloud at the same time. By talking about Purple Cloud, we're talking about the value of a great phone system, because we're talking to them about, here's how you're going to track your sales team and your customer service team. Here's how you're going to know who's working really hard and who's not, who's being responsive to customers and who's not. Here's how you're going to track your marketing sources. Here's how you're going to know that ad that you put in that newspaper is actually driving results. And not only is it driving phone calls, but we get all the data into their CRM system. We integrate with all the major CRMs as well. So here's how you can actually take phone calls or, from a newspaper ad and attribute it all the way down to sales. So you can say, hey, I spent $10,000 on this ad, and ultimately it resulted in me selling 6 cars or 4 bicycles or whatever it was that you sold off of those things. But yeah, the relationship has been game changing. It's also just a generally good thing. I feel like this is nothing new that I've discovered, but when small startups partner with multi-billion-dollar organizations and just sort of ride on their coattails, so to speak, it can be extremely, extremely helpful.
That's awesome. So you actually mentioned sales a little bit at the end of that. So I'm going to go that direction, even though I don't participate in sales calls. We do have a sales team at Clerk Chat. And so I've learned the importance of data and analytics as invaluable tools for sales teams to engage effectively with customers. And I know that sales staff do rely on real-time insights to customize their interactions and, of course, drive meaningful conversations. So can you walk us through how Purple Cloud collects, processes, and then delivers the data in real time to a sales team so that they can now use that? And then I guess as a follow-up, how do these sales teams use this data to maybe drive better results?
Yep. No, absolutely. So I'd say there's 2 major sort of sides to how Purple Cloud helps sales teams. One is from a sales management standpoint. Going back to that same example, sales, different from other roles, it takes time, and it's highly variable in terms of a good salesperson versus a bad salesperson. And you want to know, you don't want to hire a person, wait a year, and then find out after a year they didn't hit their numbers, they're not really a good salesperson. And I think knowing their activity level, knowing the phone calls, and I've thought about doing this for Purple Cloud, tracking email or tracking other interactions as well. Like, you can really tell a lot by a person based on how hard they're working. It's horrible to say, but yeah, you got to work hard to do any job well, and to be a good salesperson, you have to call your customers back. You have to be available. They got to answer your phone when they call. You got to text them back. So understanding from a sales management standpoint, who's working hard, who's not working hard is obviously important. Also, another major aspect of sales.
I just thought to myself, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I guess in my head,
Sure.
I'm thinking that might be great for management for tracking and keeping track of like OKRs and KPIs
Yeah,
and
100%.
whether or not their employees are hitting them,
Yeah,
and have actual some type of data to show for it.
yep. And people use our data exactly in that fashion, where they'll look at the number of phone calls, but they'll also look at the number of appointments set, looking at the CRM system, and they'll look at the correlation, those things, because it helps you not only understand your employees, but understand potential issues. Hey, look, this employee is a great salesperson. They actually have a great close rate, but they make 1/10 the number of phone calls that other people do. If I can have a talk with them about getting them to make a few more phone calls, or potentially have someone scheduling for them, or whatever it is, I can then put them in front of more people and potentially close more deals. But yeah, there's all sorts of ways that you can leverage the data. Another sort of very key aspect of sales, it sounds very boring and mundane, but commission. Most sales jobs are paid on commission. It's very, very, very important that you pay the right commission to the right person. You need to make sure, if you want to retain top talent, that you know exactly who drives what deals. So if you're running a brick and mortar business and one employee, let's say you're running an auto dealership, one customer talks to an employee on Tuesday, and a week later, after that phone call, they come into the dealership and they say, yeah, I had a conversation with somebody. I don't really remember who, but show me some cars. And then they talk to somebody else and then they buy a car. Well, if you don't know exactly who they spoke to, and you don't sort of keep that customer journey and help, you're ultimately not going to pay the commission to that person who had that clearly effective conversation on Tuesday that led to the person entering the dealership, and you're going to lose that person, So it's important to sort of track commission. Another key aspect of sales is just leads, like getting those leads, tracking those leads, pushing those leads down the sales funnel.
Down the funnel.
A major source of leads is phone calls, especially for brick and mortar businesses. Think about how many customer journeys start with a phone call. It's certain, I mentioned we have a lot of auto dealers at Purple Cloud, but there are certain businesses where you call up a pizza restaurant, you order a pizza, and that's sort of the beginning and the end of your customer journey. You call up a dealership and you even simply say what time you open till. Well, that's a big deal. That you've just raised your hand and you've said, I'm about to start a 45-day process of looking to purchase the most expensive product sold in retail. And that's a big deal. And you want to make sure that that one short 20-second phone call is entered into the CRM. And then the CRM does all sorts of cool things. A well set up CRM will send marketing to that person, will send emails to them and mailers to their home. It'll remind certain inside sales teams and other sales teams to follow up with that person. It will remind management if those salespeople are not following up. So getting the data into the CRM is hugely valuable. But a lot of it's basic stuff, knowing who's working hard, knowing who's not working hard, paying commission to the right person, making sure that you follow up with those things. But our approach to call tracking, so now our approach of tracking 100% of the calls versus 30%, now you're talking about actual sales. You're actually resulting in more leads in your CRM, more better follow-up, and actually they're actually selling more stuff.
I took some notes here. But one thing I'm walking away with is that it is really important. Maybe person B made the sale at the end of the day, but person A, from the time someone walked in the door or got on the phone, started with the brand awareness, and they should be given the credit for having gotten them that far.
Or if they're physically at the dealership, do you introduce them? I mean, there's all sorts of ways to manage that team, or do they split the commission? I mean, there's various ways to manage it. But step one is knowing the information, knowing the data, and sort of tracking that stuff through.
I have a few really fun questions that I want to ask
you. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Given your background and knowledge of tech, I'm really curious some of your responses here. I feel like you've kind of always been in the know of industry trends, whether you talk about them or not. You seem to be the kind of guy who always knows what's going on out there. Even if, I was thinking when we were talking before about this whole concept of hype, that everybody goes this way, but maybe you go this way. But I still think that you're aware of what everybody.
Yeah, I'm still aware. I mean, there's certain things I'm very excited about.
Yeah. And so We've seen how companies adapt to emerging technologies, and they do often thrive and they do lead the way. For example, if we do consider an e-commerce and the shift toward this mobile first customer interaction. So Purple Cloud is unique, and with its combination of communication and analytics, it's really well positioned, in my opinion, to make a significant impact. It already is, based on everything that you've told me. Are there specific trends or innovations you've observed and are like really excited about that either have already influenced, Purple Cloud or could in the future? I'm just kind of curious your opinion there when it comes to innovation.
I'm chomping at the bit. Like I'm excited. Like I want to interrupt you just to say the two letters AI. I mean, it's obviously, yeah, it's something that's hugely exciting, and it's not something that I was always excited about. Historically, even with my last startup of Magnetic, which was search retargeting, we targeted graphical display ads based off of search history, meaning someone searches for Ford F-150, we showed them a graphical ad for a Ford F-150. It was not that interesting. And while everybody else was doing behavioral targeting and artificial intelligence, I felt at that time it was a lot of nonsense. It didn't really work that well. But here we are today. AI is amazing. Unless you live under a rock, you're fully aware that there's been just a dramatic improvement in the quality of the technology due to the fact that compute power is much stronger than it's been, the prevalence of data and our availability of having access. I mean, you can use AI for anything. But yeah, I'd say AI is by far, and it's already, Purple Cloud's already launched a bunch of features where literally you can get a summary of very, very oddly well. It's like scary. Even the clients say to me, it's scary how well written these summaries are. I was reading a summary the other day of a call that went bad. It said at one point, the customer exclaimed, "Oh my God," and actually put it in quotes. And if you listen to the call, the customer was really pissed. And the customer at some point said, "Oh my God." But the thing was funny that it knew to actually put that there. Like it knew that that was
tone.
Yeah, that was demonstrative of how bad the call went, that the person said, "Oh my God," at some point in the middle of the conversation. And it's scary how well it works, that we can take a business that has 40,000 calls a month and show them the 100 calls that did not go well. And it really works. We can tell them, was an appointment set, was an appointment offered, did they invite them to the store? What's the customer sentiment? Were they, give me a summary, what product was discussed? What was the price of that product? And what I'm even starting to use is having the AI write the code that generates all of that AI data, which is even crazier. I mean, so yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
Do you think from your perspective that, I know a lot of people jumped right on AI as soon as it was even a thing or as soon as it was even a conversation, but do you think in your perspective, in a lot of cases, maybe yours, it just needed some time to develop and mature?
Yeah, and AI means a lot of different things, but yeah, 100%. It did need to mature. I mean, a lot of it, it's working better and better and better, and it's crazy when you envision what it's going to be like in 20 years in terms of already they have so many AI models that can do better than what a human being can do. So in AI, they have this thing called, I think it's called Bayes error. It's like, what's the best error rate that you assume something can do? And usually people estimate that to be what the human can do. So if you're trying to categorize pictures into ones that have a picture of a cat and ones that don't, and you say, well, a human being can answer that question with 99.6% accuracy, I'm going to assume a computer at best will do similar, but it's not true. A computer in so many situations is actually doing better than what a human can do. I'm not a big proponent of all this, AI is going to take over the world, and I don't think that, but I do think there's some amazingly powerful applications, definitely.
I don't know if you already listened to the Lex Fridman podcast or not, but the CEO of Clerk Chat, where I work, actually had recommended that I tune in to his podcast in general.
Yep.
But the first episode I ended up listening to was with the guest Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI. I was fascinated by this episode. You should really check it out because it's long. It's really long. You could actually find it either on YouTube or wherever you typically listen to your podcast, but it was a fascinating episode to listen to.
Got it. Sounds great. I mean, I'm going to lose all credibility by this next comment. I don't think I've ever listened to a podcast in my entire life, which is a horrible thing to say to like a podcast audience, but But yeah, I read a lot. But
It's a different way to consume information. I happen to listen to podcasts daily because it's a way that, when I used to drive home from work, for example, it was a quick way for me to consume some information, learn something, even get some celebrity gossip in there too. What I do love to read. I'm still a reader, but there was a point there where I found myself in the car. Even now when I walk the dog, through the neighborhood, I always have a podcast on. So anyway, you should listen to that one. Even if you
yeah, no,
don't
I
listen
will.
to a
I
live
will
podcast,
100%.
you should really tune into that one because I feel like you would enjoy the conversation between them.
I mean, the most exciting thing about AI is there's going to be this dramatic shift too, where right now, everything that you're seeing with ChatGPT and everything like that, that's all supervised learning, meaning someone sat down, a human being sat down and said, here's a bunch of inputs, here's a bunch of outputs. And that's how they created it. Similar with a Tesla or a self-driving car, they said, here's a bunch of pictures of a road, and here's where the person is, here's where the car is, here's where the sidewalk is. And they sort of taught it how to do this through supervised learning. And now there's a whole area of research going on in unsupervised learning where they'll literally take this robotic dog and say, you just need to get from point A to point B and you just need to figure out how to do it. And this thing jiggles around and it on its own figures out how to balance, figures out how to walk. And it's crazy. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's unbelievable. What potentials AI has, definitely.
I was about to ask, and maybe you just sort of answered it, but maybe not. I was wondering if you think that there are any specific trends or applications or use cases that you've heard of AI being used that you think are particularly compelling, that you were fascinated hearing about and learning about.
Yeah, I'd say I'll sort of answer in a couple ways. One is my biggest disappointment with sort of Purple Cloud is I've always wanted to start a business that's like really helping humanity. You know what I mean? So like if I were to start another startup, and hopefully I will someday, it'll do something that serves, obviously I care about my clients. I'm happy that they're selling more cars or this or that. But at the same time, there are potentially bigger problems out there, people who suffer more than a salesperson, and obviously, to help those people. I mean, literally just this morning, I was talking to my brother who is a professor at Johns Hopkins, and he's a biochemist, and he's asking me to sort of point him in the right direction around AI. So I quickly did some research and I sent him some stuff. It's amazing. They literally will create an AI algorithm that can take a list of chemical compounds and solubilities of those chemical compounds, and then from that generate an AI model that can tell you whether or not this new chemical compound is going to be soluble or not, which if you're a drug manufacturer, but that's just one of like a bazillion examples of how it can be applied to anything, whether it's trying to figure out some specific thing or trying to generate some new drug or trying to guide research in a certain direction. I think the applications are endless, but personally, I'm most excited about sort of how AI could be used to help humanity, whether it's this website spoke exactly this about the democratization of sort of creation of medicines. It's something that's generally very, very large, very, very wealthy companies and wealthy countries that are creating these medicines. And what if there was another way to do it? What if there's an easier way to generate things that would potentially be beneficial to human beings? But yeah, I think sky's the limit. There's so many applications. Anywhere where you can have inputs and outputs, AI will be hugely powerful, which is pretty much everywhere.
I know you didn't ask my opinion, but I'm going to share it because I tend to overcomplicate things a lot. And so I thought to myself, one of the things that so many people are always asking for more of is time, that there are never enough hours in the day. There's always these to-do lists that never seem to feel checked off. And so in talking to a lot of colleagues or, friends, and the way they've been using AI, which is very different than the way that you just described it, it seems that AI can be a huge benefit when it comes to time and speeding up processes. And so
100%.
I'm looking at it, trying to look at it from that perspective. And while it might not replace things, or it could, if it's going to save you time somehow, and you're using it properly and you're using it respectfully, I think that time component can be a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, the magic's in the data. I mean, that's what the way sort of AI works is, it saves the most amount of time for a software engineer. People always talk about what industries it's going to replace. The person that's going to replace the fastest, I think, are software engineers. It's software engineer in the traditional sense. A person like you is going to be more likely to use AI to build something that helps from a standpoint of education or from a standpoint of publishing or whatever it is than me, even though I know how to code software and perhaps you don't, but at the same time, you with your knowledge of sort of that particular vertical, you could use it better. And I think it's going to dramatically change a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole point is the whole guidance of the whole purpose of AI is to get a computer to do something without explicitly telling it to do it, which by definition is exactly what you're saying. It's saving time for the person who's getting the computer to do something. But yeah, totally agree.
We'll see. We'll see. It's a wild world out there. It's evident that Purple Cloud is at the forefront of innovation. I'm really fascinated by hearing everything that you've shared, when it comes to innovation, communication, analytics. You bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to the table. So could you share some either key takeaways or advice, whether it's for an aspiring entrepreneur, for instance, in the tech industry, or maybe a business that's looking to enhance their customer engagement, or a professional that's navigating technology in general, in communication? What words of wisdom, or forward-looking insights would you share?
Yeah. And I hate to be repetitive, but I would pull back to where I started, which is about sort of that customer focus. I think most products suck. I think most companies suck. And I think if you truly are passionate about helping some group of people solve a specific problem, anybody can start any company that they want. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a company. I mean, you can work for a company and also solve that particular problem and have sort of a very exciting career as well. But I think it all focuses is try to figure out what it is that problem that it is that you want to solve. And I think, if you do that, you'll be hugely, hugely successful if you can just focus on that problem.
I think it's great advice. And it's not that it was repetitive. I think it's a really important point that you needed to mention in a few different ways. So I think that a lot of people should remember this whole concept of customer focus and customer centric and see where it takes them.
Sounds great.
So if somebody wants to be in touch with you or learn more about Purple Cloud, how can they do that?
You can go to our website, www.purplecloud.com. You can email me, josh@purplecloud.com. And I look forward to connecting with anybody who who heard or appreciated what I had to say.
Thanks so much for adding all your insights today. We all appreciate it at 160 characters.
Thank you so much.
Talk soon.